Hi, everybody. It's Friday Eve. I always love that because, you know, it means you got only one day left. And I know some of you call it in on Fridays, but they were not calling it in the federal courthouse in southern Manhattan today. Oh, God, just when I thought things were going to, like, lighten up in the trial of P. Diddy and that the testimony may get a little bit more palatable, maybe boring, you know, maybe some technical stuff like a cell phone expert or something. Nope. No. No, the parade of witnesses with horrible things to say about P. Diddy's behavior continue today, and today may have been one of the worst, apart from Cassie. I know I keep saying that. Yesterday it was bad because I saw a lot of crimes being testified to on the stand that lined up with RICO. Today on the stand was a witness with a pseudonym who was yet another employee of Diddy's, but this one not only said she saw horrible abuses and forced coercion and, you know, obstruction of justice and all those kinds of things, she said she herself was also raped 3 times by Diddy. She said that her pay was pulled, you know, for doing things like going out on her own free time because Diddy didn't want her to. The force, the coercion, the control was so highlighted by this young woman. She was too afraid to speak on the stand, barely in whispers all day long. Today, you're going to hear from the woman who prosecuted R. Kelly on RICO. Very similar. So how does she think this case is going? And then you're going to hear from Sammy the Bull Gravano, prosecuted on RICO. What does he think is happening in the P. Diddy case? Do the feds have enough to put P. Diddy away? That's all coming up. Also, in those manhunts, dang, these guys know how to stay hid. 2 of those inmates from the 10 New Orleans escapees are still out there, tattoo-faced guy and one other. Unbelievable. Either they have way more help than the other guys had, or they're just real smart at staying under the radar. And then the cop. Not just a cop, a police chief. The rapist, murderer, police chief, that guy, who somehow fashioned himself a law enforcement uniform and walked out of his cell a couple days ago. He is in the Ozarks. They call him the devil of the Ozarks. And the places where he could hide are so numerous. But is this guy old and out of shape, any match for all the really young, tough law enforcement officers that are hunting him down with dogs? You're going to get an update to that. Also, you'll find out why his kitchen job may have helped him to escape. And then remember Wade Wilson? There's a theme going on with tattoo faces, but Wade Wilson was that feller with the tattoos all over his face. Yeah, that guy. Apparently, he's got legions of girls who love him, send him all sorts of notes in prison. But suddenly, this guy who ruthlessly murdered 2 women he didn't even know is a little bit scared for his own life. Yeah, turns out on death row, Wade Wilson is scared. He's scared of the big, dangerous killers that he's housed with. 2 in particular, he says, want to kill him. And the ladies who love him, apparently they're doing everything they can to protect him. I'll tell you about that and what they're up to in just a moment. But first this, it has been a steady stream of gut-wrenching allegations since day 1 of the Diddy trial. But today the testimony took things to a whole new level. Another one of Diddy's many assistants took the stand, and from the start it was made pretty clear this was no ordinary witness. She was introduced simply as Mia, not her real name, and the judge warned the court, no descriptions, no sketches, which is why you don't see any facial representations, even by a sketch artist. Nothing was to be revealed about this person's identity, and whoever did would face severe consequences by the court. Why such extreme measures? Because the horrors that poured out of Mia today were raw and graphic, including multiple allegations of rape. Mia was like a frightened mouse on the stand all day long, terrified to speak up, staring straight into her lap throughout the day, afraid to make eye contact with anyone, and mostly weeping through all of her answers. Like the other assistants who testified, Mia said she witnessed Diddy's countless violent assaults against his girlfriend and his employee, music artist Cassie Ventura. Mia corroborated a terrifying night, first described on the stand by Diddy and Cassie's stylist, Deontay Nash. She said they jumped on Diddy trying to stop the beating, the relentless, forceful beating he was giving to Cassie. She testified that she saw Diddy slam Cassie's head into a bed frame, causing blood to gush from above her eye. Mia said she thought Diddy was going to kill Cassie. And when Diddy stopped, she said he then ordered Mia and another assistant to call a doctor and lie. Tell them Cassie was drunk and fell. If you're keeping score, that looks a whole lot like obstruction of justice. Mia also described the night that she and Cassie were forbidden by Diddy from leaving their hotel room, even though he planned to stay in for the night in another hotel. But the two decided to sneak out anyway, to a party, one that was being hosted by Prince. I probably would have snuck out too. Mia testified that when Diddy showed up at the party held by Prince, these two girls tried to leave quickly, but that Diddy caught them and threw Cassie to the ground. She says that Prince's security team intervened before anything more serious could happen. Mia claims that Diddy was toxic and violent with her as well. She told the jury that he slammed her head into a wall, that he threw her into a pool, that he threw an ice bucket and a computer at her head, and that he repeatedly slammed her arm in a bathroom door until she thought it was broken. But nothing prepared the court for what Mia said next. Mia alleges that Diddy sexually assaulted her at least 3 different times. Again, Mia is his assistant. At Diddy's 40th birthday party, she testified that Diddy kissed her and then slid his hand up her dress, totally shocking her. Another time, she says he crept into her bedroom while she was asleep and woke him up by being on top of her. She said she froze, didn't know what to do as he forced himself on her. And then once she testified while on the floor of his closet, packing his clothes for his business trip, she says he came into that closet right up to her face with his groin and then forced her to perform oral sex. Mia says she never told anybody or reported the attacks out of fear that she would be physically harmed and out of fear that she had signed a non-disclosure agreement. Again, she's his employee. She also said that Diddy threatened to, quote, tell everybody, including Cassie, that she'd had sex with him. Mia said she thought they would think she'd initiated it. She told the jury, quote, I knew his power and I knew his control over me. I didn't want to lose everything that I had worked so hard for, end quote. The allegations are just despicable. But here's the question. Are they proof of RICO, racketeering, influenced, corrupt organization? If anybody knows, it is my next guest, Maria Cruz Melendez. She's a former federal prosecutor for the Eastern District of New York. She investigated and convicted R. Kelly on, you guessed it, RICO charges. She also prosecuted multiple organized crime cases and secured the conviction of members of La Cosa Nostra. Maria, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you. I can't believe the number of naysayers that, I don't know if you're watching the media coverage and the analysis on the Diddy trial. I'm following it moment to moment, and I see RICO left, right, and center. But so many people who are smart lawyers say, nope, nothing to see here. What do you think?
I think there are a couple of things. I think it's tough to ask the question about whether or not the government has proven RICO, particularly so early on. I know there was a lot of commentary very, very early on. And when you're first getting the victim's statements about things, I think it's very easy to say, well, the victim is just talking about domestic violence or assault issues that are more state law types of issues. However, I think, and you mentioned this in your opening, the fact that Mia has testified to information that she obtained as a person who worked for Sean Combs, which means she was inside of the enterprise that has been charged by the government. And so in that situation, I think she provides powerful evidence that can be used by the government to show that an enterprise existed and that the enterprise was used, including herself, in order to engage in the conduct that's been alleged. One of the other things I would just quickly note as well is that in this case, RICO itself, substantive RICO, hasn't been charged. Racketeering conspiracy is what has been charged. And so what the government needs to show is that Sean Combs agreed with at least one other person to engage in racketeering. And so they don't have to prove specific racketeering acts in the way that you would need to if you would charge substantive racketeering.
Do you see a lot of similarities between the R. Kelly case and the Diddy case? Because everybody wants to compare, this particular case to the mob, and they say there's no similarity between them. What about R. Kelly?
Yeah, there's certainly parallels. You have a high-profile defendant who's alleged to have used his legitimate business and the people around him, his circle of people, whether that's friends, colleagues, but also individuals who specifically worked for him, assistants, runners, security, in order to make sure that he was able to commit the crimes that have been alleged. And I think some of the testimony that has happened this week in particular demonstrates the ways in which that he used individuals at his disposal in order to maintain control over individuals like Cassie Ventura.
Yeah, I keep hearing evidence of coercion, control, fear. I'm also hearing obstruction of justice. I'm hearing bribery. I'm hearing all these predicate acts, right? But still, so many analysts are saying, no, there's no enterprise here. Where do you see the enterprise coming in with Diddy as compared to the enterprise that came in with R. Kelly?
Yeah, the enterprises, I think, are similar as well. Something that people sometimes confuse about racketeering is that they think that the enterprise has to be criminal. With racketeering, that's not the case. You can have a legitimate enterprise, and the question is whether or not that legitimate enterprise, which can be a business, is being used in order to commit the pattern of racketeering that's been charged. And with racketeering enterprises, it can be as informal as a pickup basketball team. So as long as individuals are associated in fact and they're engaging in the pattern of racketeering that's alleged, then you've got an enterprise. And so the fact that Sean Combs has a business that functioned where he had individuals who were at his disposal, and to the extent he used assistants or other individuals who worked for him, who were in his orbit, in his circle, then I think an enterprise can be, and I think we've heard a lot of evidence that shows an enterprise has been proven.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? I think a lot of people also don't know that the feds can use the language knowing or unknowing in terms of committing a crime. So some of these assistants who may have been dispatched to commit a crime, let's just say Uncle Paulie, the testimony that Uncle Paulie took poor Capricorn Clark to a vacant building and threatened that she was going to swim with the fishes in the East River and, told her she had to take lie detector tests for 5 days. Sounds to me like Uncle Paulie should have known that's kidnapping. But even if Uncle Paulie didn't know it was kidnapping, there's the knowing and unknowing aspect of it, isn't there?
Absolutely. Individuals who are members of the enterprise, that label doesn't mean that you yourself know that criminal activity is happening or that you've engaged in criminal activity. It means that you, in particular instances, it means that you yourself have provided some sort of an assistance to the individual who's being charged with racketeering. And so in this situation, you've got Sean Combs using security, using assistance, using anyone who's at his disposal as part of his organization and his business in order to engage in the charged conduct. I think one of the things we heard from Mia that's been reported is that she said at one point she didn't provide information or she didn't tell law enforcement, and that at certain times she didn't say no to Sean Combs because of the way he reacted if she had said no to bringing him a sandwich. And so I think she certainly had very, very strong testimony that suggested that he not only used and coerced Cassie Ventura, but also when it came to his assistants like Mia, also exerted control via humiliation, physical abuse, and other forms, including financial form. I think you mentioned earlier the fact that he threatened her pay during certain instances. And so all of these things have been alleged as the means and methods of the enterprise. And I think that the government is certainly trying to get all this information in order to prove those allegations that have been made in the indictment.
There's also the extortion part, right? I'm going to release sex tapes of you. I'm going to send the sex tapes to your parents, and I'm going to have your parents fired. Like, those are all extortion, too. Hey, I got a question for you. That every piece of information I hear in this case, be it, you know, testimony or photographs, evidence, it makes me hate Sean Combs. Whether he's guilty or not guilty, I personally despise this person just from what I saw him do to Cassie on the hotel video and then admit to it later on social media. And I wonder how powerful that is for jurors, meaning this could be very complicated for jurors to figure out RICO, you know, it could be racketeering and racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking. Do you think they can hate him just enough to say, I don't care what the charge is, I'm voting guilty on something, anything?
Yeah, look, the defense counsel is going to say, likely in their closing, you don't have to like Sean Combs. You don't have to think that he's a good person. But at the end of the day, they're going to argue that this is domestic violence, this is assault, it's not racketeering. But the jury has received, and they will receive instructions by the court. They have to make their decision not based on emotion, not based on feeling sorry for certain witnesses, or even their hatred to the extent it comes to that, for the defendant. They have to make their decision based on the evidence that's been presented, and they have to come to a decision beyond a reasonable doubt. Is it possible that jurors could have trouble distinguishing those things? Absolutely, but they've taken an oath, and the hope is always that they stick to that oath when they're deliberating.
Yeah, but you and I have seen our fair share of these cases in these juries, and there's all sorts of jury nullification that goes on. They vote with their gut, right? And their gut oftentimes can be emotional, too. Maria Cruz Melendez, I really hope we can continue talking, because I only got to half of my questions, and I have so many more for you. Thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
And we'll see you again soon, I hope. Coming up next, as Diddy looks to avoid this racketeering conviction, it might pay to study the past, because the roadmap out of a RICO charge may already exist, made by the Teflon Don himself, John Gotti. The man who brought Gotti down is my next guest. But does Sammy the Bull Gravano think the feds have enough on Diddy to get him on racketeering? That is next. If Sean Diddy Combs is found guilty of being the head of a criminal enterprise, he may not end up in prison long. Past RICO cases have shown just how tricky getting and keeping a conviction can be. Case in point, John Gotti. 39 years ago this month, in May of 1986, Gotti was locked up only to walk free after an acquittal, yes, less than a year later. And that acquittal earned Gotti the nickname the Teflon Don. He was on trial for the mob assassination of Gambino crime boss Paul Castellano. It happened outside of New York Steakhouse in December of 1985. The murder made headlines across the country and cleared the way for Gotti to assume control of the Gambino crime family, making him the most powerful mob boss in the USA. And that sway helped him to win his court case, because what the prosecution didn't know was that Gotti somehow made his way onto the jury. He had a man on the inside, juror number 11. His name was George Pape. He sold his vote on the jury for $60,000. Pape had reached out to Sammy the Bull Gravano, who was helping to run the Gotti organization while the boss was locked away. And after almost 6 months of trial, John Gotti walked out of federal court a free man. But feds did not give up. In 1990, Gotti was charged with racketeering again. But this time, it was the feds who had their inside man. That man was Sammy the Bull Gravano, the same underboss who negotiated the deal with juror number 11 back in 1987. Sammy the Bull testified against Gotti and sent Gotti to prison for life without parole. But it came at a cost, because Sammy the Bull had to enter the witness protection program soon after the trial. Although He left that program after just 8 months. In 1997, a book called Underboss was written about his life, and Sammy the Bull Gravano joins me live now. I have been waiting to talk to you. Thank you so much for doing this tonight. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. There was a few things I'd like to correct the statement. I mean, I was the guy.
Yep.
I rigged the trials for John Gotti. I bribed jurors. That $60,000 fee, I paid him $60,000 in cash and got him a job as a Teamster foreman that he made $75,000 a year. So, and then at the end, when I did cooperate, he got arrested and he pled guilty and admitted to everything I'm saying right now. So that's how we beat the case.
Well, there's a reason, you know, there's a reason that there are countless books and movies and Broadway shows and plays all about the actions and activities of the mob. And it's because it's transfixing the things that went on. But I am curious if you, having gone through it all, having been pulled under the RICO statute and been locked away yourself, do you see that racketeering applies in what you're hearing out of Diddy's case so far?
Yeah, parts of it. The racketeering law is a very complicated law. I was arrested a couple of times under RICO, and a couple of times I testified in cases that the RICO law was used. And it's easy to understand when you're using it against the mafia or cartel or, an organization like that, a criminal organization. This is a different form of the RICO, where the organization is where Diddy had his company, he used that as a criminal organization. But it's going to be a little hard to understand for a lot of people because it was confusing. Lawyers were confused about it. I'm a little confused about it. I think they have a clear-cut case without the RICO case. I mean, what this guy did is disgusting. I don't think there's a person alive, a man or a woman, especially women, who are not going to hate this guy. Whatever he did was completely disgusting. It's beyond criminal. I don't even know what it is. I look at it like he disgraced everybody. He disgraced the black race by being a black man. I know a lot of black people, and they hate him for it because it painted a picture towards all of them. I think it's being followed all over the world. If he's not found guilty or he's cut free or he does a short amount of time, I mean, I could only imagine what the whole world would think. This is a disgusting country. So there's a lot of things.
Sammy, if you would, give me your comparison. I mean, listen, guys in the mob did some terrible, terrible things. The murders were gruesome and violent and painful, and they served a purpose. They were meant to terrify people into staying in line, right? Compare that to the things that you've heard alleged from the witness stand and testimony under oath from a lot of these young women and some of the young men who were his assistants. Compare the guys in the mob to the stuff you're hearing alleged against Diddy.
If we did that in the mob, we would be killed for it. We would never touch women and children and stuff like that. So that's against our rules, our principles. We would never get away with something like that. There was a guy, Roy DeMeo and Gas Pipe, who became serial killers, killing for no reason, and they were killed. So, I mean, if he was in the mafia, he would, and we knew what he was doing, he would have been killed. There would be no trial.
Interesting. So what if he is convicted? And that is a long way. We're it's a 9-week trial. We're only 2 weeks into it. We're only in the prosecution's case. So obviously it looks bad for Diddy right now. If he's convicted, what would his life in federal lockup be like, given the evidence that we've been hearing about him and the way he treated women?
He's going to be treated like a in plain English. I mean, that's what they're going to do with him. They don't like child molesters in prisons. This is very, very similar. Listen, we're all men. We have wives. We have daughters. We have granddaughters. When you hear this, it's going to turn your stomach. So I'm sure women will feel that way, and I'm sure most men will feel that way. So it's one thing to have these sexual parties and do what you want, swingers, but he took that to a whole nother level. I mean, there's women who didn't go along. Some women went along with it. Most of them did. He gave them drugs and stuff like that. They were unconscious. By the time they woke up, they don't even know who did what. This is, I've never seen or heard anything like it in my life.
You know, Diddy's a billionaire. His defense is going to bleed a lot of money out of him, but $1 billion is a lot more. Some have said that money will buy him anything he needs in prison. It will buy him friends, it will buy him protection, it will buy him influence. Do you think that the money can leapfrog the other issues that you just said, that he will be considered, you know, on the lowest rung given the crimes that we've heard alleged in this trial?
Now, it's true. Money talks in prison. He could buy a little bit of a protection, but they'll use him. Nobody will like him. They'll use him, but some guys are broke in prison, and they'll cater to him a little bit, maybe protect him so that they're getting money. It's going to be hard for him to get money into prison. I don't care if he's got billions or whatever it is. It's still got to come in through the prison system. And they're only going to allow a certain amount of money coming in. They're not going to allow huge amounts of money. And there's people watching these things that go on in prison. So he's not going to just be able to buy everybody in the joint. They'll see that, they'll stop it, they'll put a stop to it. He'll have some use of some money, but not big money. And people will hate him regardless, no matter how much money he has on the outside. Like I said, it's not going to get in that easy. They'll monitor all that.
Well, and again, he's innocent until proven guilty, and we're only 2 weeks into the trial. I have one more question for you that I've been dying to ask you all these years. I know you were living this lifestyle. I know this was your world, but you've been out of it for a long time. And are you 19 murders? I'm trying to remember. Was it 19 murders that you committed?
Yeah. No, I didn't commit 19 murders. I was involved in 19 murders. Sometimes I was the planner. Sometimes I was the shooter. Sometimes I was just, you know, there's different, on a hit, there's a lot of different people, positions that you play. So I didn't kill 19 people. Sounds like I killed them all. I never woke up one morning and wanted to kill somebody. I usually had orders to do it like a soldier would have. And I never, you know, we didn't kill women. We didn't kill children. And I never killed an innocent man. It was somebody who was in the mafia, who took the oath. You live by the oath or you die by the oath. So you break the rules and you die. Now, if you don't have
so no regrets?
Excuse me?
No regrets?
No, that's the rules and that's the life you live by. I was in the military as well, and there was rules. I was taught to kill the enemy. There's no regrets in doing that. You're fighting in a war. This is the same exact thing. If you can't have rules that you know, you got a lot of tough guys in the mafia, whether it's the black mafia, the Italian mafia. Now, if you don't have rules where you die if you break the rules, how do you control them? You lose control of them.
I have been so fascinated. I could talk to you for hours, and I'm going to ask you to come back because I think this trial is going to go on for a while, and I'd really love to hear your perspective as it continues. Sammy the Bull, thanks so much for being on. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, and it's a pleasure to come on. And anytime you want me back, just let me know.
Okay, we'll do that for sure. We'll call for sure. Sammy the Bull Gravano joining us live tonight on Banfield. Coming up next, major updates in 2 manhunts we've been following very closely. There is now big money being offered in the effort to capture 3 prison inmates in Louisiana and Arkansas, but for at least one of the fugitives. We think we know why he's been able to stay hidden for days and days. 3 words, 2,000 caves. We're going to take you there next. For nearly 2 weeks, we've been asking the same question. Where are the armed and dangerous escaped inmates Derek Groves and Antoine Massey? Massey's the one with the face tattoos there. Tonight, That's officially a $100,000 question because it was just announced that officials are upping the bounty on their heads to $50,000 each. Call in a tip that leads to both arrests and you'll pocket a cool $100,000. Groves and Massey were 2 of the 10 inmates who leapt to freedom from the loading dock of the New Orleans jail, completely unnoticed. Don't ask. This after crawling through a hole behind a toilet in a prison cell. Don't ask. 8 of those 10 escapees are now back in custody. 3 of them because the tips came in from Crime Stoppers. And one of those arrests happened within 30 minutes of a tip coming in. So yeah, call Crime Stoppers. All told, police say they've received 700 tips about these fugitives. And it's not just New Orleans offering rewards. There is now a $10,000 reward on Grant Hardin's head. He's the former police chief from Arkansas who turned into a rapist and murderer and prison escapee. You may know him by his other name, the Devil in the Ozarks, after a documentary featured his sordid life. He's now been on the run for more than 4 days after this jaw-dropping escape, simply, walking out of a Max, dressed in a lawman's uniform, pushing a dolly. But the search for Grant Hardin has not been easy. The terrain is unforgiving, and more than 2,000 caves dot the landscape that they're searching in northern Arkansas, the entrances of which are not very obvious to passersby. So how in the world did it come to this? NewsNation correspondent Xavier Walton is live with the very latest. Xavier, I can't believe that this out-of-shape old guy has been able to give the slip for this many days. What's the latest?
Well, on the ground here, Ashleigh, you can still see the checkpoint behind me, right? You see the blue lights there, obviously still checking people coming in and out of this area. About 3 miles down the road, we'll throw up the drone video. You'll actually see that prison that this convicted killer and rapist, escaped from. But you talk about the case, and that has been extremely problematic. You say there's about 2,000 of them. Well, here's the thing. Authorities, for everyone they know about, there's another one that they don't know about. And then you talked about the terrain. You got to keep in mind, it either takes a horse, so you got to go by horseback, or an all-terrain vehicle, an ATV, just to get to some of these areas. And you may not even see them. They might be right in front of your face. And then you got to factor in the weather as well. Heavy rain recently here in this part of the country, not to mention it rained today too. That hampers investigators and search crews, and it has really for the last several days.
I said it last night, I'll say it again tonight. He's no Bear Grylls. I've seen that guy's shape, and he looks like he could barely walk a mile. However, food is the big issue, to keep fed for those cold nights and the track that you got to make during the nighttime. And it turns out this guy, had a job in the kitchen. What do you know about that?
Well, that was very interesting, and we talked to the Arkansas Department of Corrections public information officer about it. It was actually the last question we asked him in our one-on-one interview. It was actually Darius, the field producer, who asked the question, and yes, he worked in the kitchen. And just talking to some of my sources, the thing that was super interesting about it, if you look at that photo, the last one we saw of him when he was disguised as some sort of law enforcement, those boxes, we're starting to hear that inside of those boxes, there might have actually been potentially food. Where would he get that food? Considering he was working in the kitchen. He was working in the kitchen the night he escaped. Take a listen to some of that conversation.
He has been a member of the kitchen staff since he's been in, and so that includes preparing meals for close to 1,000 inmates 3 times a day. So that is what he has done inside the prison, and we have confirmed he was working that shift the day of his escape.
And that makes me think, okay, did he maybe, with the escape, prepare for that and say, okay, I need this amount of food, I'm going to take it with me when I leave?
One thing that we tell, a lot of people is, those of us, in our everyday lives, we have, so many things that we're worried about every single day, our jobs, our bills, our family, whatever. When you're inside of a prison, you really don't have a lot to think about other than ways to get out. And so, I'm sure there's, especially considering his background as law enforcement, that was probably one of his priorities was, putting together a plan and trying to figure out a way that he could get out.
So clearly he was desperate and possibly preparing for Lord knows how long. And then you factor in that kitchen aspect, working in the kitchen. Maybe he had a food, some stash, and that's how he's able to survive this long. Ashleigh, we don't know, but that's why we're asking investigators.
I love that you put the 2 and 2 together with the box on the dolly, because I have been wondering, What the heck is in that box that he's, casually rolling out? All right, well, if we have this conversation again tomorrow night, because he's still on the road, I am going to ask you another question about whoever it was that opened the door to let him out dressed in that law enforcement uniform, because I'm really curious about what's going to happen to that guy. Xavier, I'm sorry you got the short stick and you're out in the Ozarks where it's buggy and not very warm and nice, but I appreciate your reporting. Thank you. Poor Xavier, man, oh man, I hope he gets a good hotel tonight. Coming up next, a face only a mother could love? I would say hardly. Wade Wilson, AKA the Deadpool Killer, actually has a lot of groupies who like this face. Girls who've been showering him with love letters while he sits on death row. And it is a good thing he's got those ladies, because it appears they are coming to his rescue for some big bad inmates who want Wade Wilson dead. I'll explain next. If I can state the obvious, prison sucks. You're told when to wake up, when to go to bed. You got bars on your windows and crappy food on your plate. Everybody around you is either a convicted criminal or a prison guard. And while it's no picnic, you can bet your bottom dollar that death row is a hell of a lot worse. And Wade Wilson is learning all of this in real time. You remember Wade with all that fancy artwork on his face during his trial? He earned the name the Deadpool Killer because he shares the same name with the comic book character. But 8 months ago, Wade Wilson landed on death row after 2 savage murders of women he had just met. Women who no doubt died in agony, terrified beyond belief as their life was being snuffed out. But it seems that Wade is now getting a little taste of his own medicine. A group of women online who for some reason have fallen in love with Wade say that he now fears. He fears for his life. He fears that he's constantly going to be killed by 2 violent murderers on his cell block. The women say that these fellow death row inmates pose such a threat that Wade has been, quote, driven to the brink, end quote, their words. The inmates in question, Daniel Craven and Peter Avzanu. The records say that Daniel drowned a man in a dog bowl and then murdered his cellmate with a shank. So, yeah, he's dangerous. And Peter Avzanu, he's the guy on the left there, Peter beat 2 men beyond recognition and then shot them both to death. Howdy, neighbor. Wade Wilson's online girlfriends have even made a formal complaint to the Florida Department of Corrections, pleading for them to keep Deadpool safe from these killers. Curious how long these women, however, are going to hold a candle for Wade, given he has definitely hit the skids since being locked up. That is what Wade looks like now. He's packed on the pounds, lost a couple teeth, and certainly the Don Juan twinkle has twinkled off. Death row tends to do that to you. And during his 8 months there, he's also racked up more than 150 pages of disciplinary reports and lost his visitor's privileges. One of those infractions, apparently, trying to smuggle out a hand-drawn piece of art, quote unquote, to a woman known as Sweet Cheeks, quote unquote. He told her to auction off the drawing and, quote, rake in the money because he's so famous. It did not work. So good luck with your neighbors, Wade, and good riddance. Still to come on this show, I have seen my fair share of masked bandits, but they are not usually as cute as this guy. Hello. After the break, I'm going to tell you how the police were able to track this guy down and why this little raccoon may actually be part of a gang of thugs. It's next. Hey, I got a little breaking news just coming across my radar here. Former NYPD Commissioner Bernard Carrick has died, 69 years old, by his family. Don't know why, don't know what. He led the NYPD through the 9/11 terror attacks under Giuliani, earned the nickname America's Cop. President Bush, George W. Bush, nominated him for Homeland Security Chief, but he had to withdraw before he got that role because he was plagued with legal troubles. You might remember in 2009, he pleaded guilty to 8 federal felonies, including charges that he evaded taxes. And he ended up serving 4 years in prison before Donald Trump decided to pardon him in 2020. And during last year's presidential election, he advised President Trump on crime and national security issues. Again, former NYPD Commissioner Bernard Kerik suddenly dead at 69 years old. Okay, that other story I was telling you about, I do want to bring it to you because I told you about it and I showed you a picture of it. But if you'd asked me a couple weeks ago which kind of crime I thought was going to spike during the month of May, raccoon crime would not have cracked the top 100, and yet here we are. For the second time this month, police in Ohio have apprehended a rogue raccoon rifling through a vehicle. On Tuesday, officers encountered what appeared to be a suspicious box truck with its blinkers on. And as they approached the vehicle, they heard movement inside and then found this little guy snacking on some Pop-Tarts in the front seat. There's no word on where the human owner of the truck was or how the raccoon got in, but it is very, very similar to an incident 2 weeks ago in Ohio. I smell gang. In that case, police pulled over a woman for a traffic violation only to find her pet raccoon, Chewy, smoking a meth pipe in the car. When the officer took the pipe away, Chewy pulled out a second meth pipe. I kid you not. Police searched the car, found a large amount of meth along with crack and 3 other glass pipes. The driver was charged with drug possession and driving with a suspended license, but oddly enough, she had the proper paperwork to keep Chewy as a pet. Can't even write this stuff. So funny. Thanks, everybody. That's it for us. But don't forget to check out my podcast, Drop Dead Serious. I'm doing daily updates in depth of the Diddy trial and the Karen Reed trial, and I will be doing Idaho as well. Stay tuned. Cuomo's next.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.